Hello, everyone. Welcome back to some StarCraft 2 History Weekly. I figure since the last two episodes were pretty much focusing on GSL and thus the Korean scene, now it is time to try and find something about the foreign scene back in the day. And I got to start off with the very basics for those that, again, have only recently come into StarCraft 2. We have eventually change our habits as commentators and the community in general to stop calling non-Koreans foreigners, but you might hear it every now and again and wonder why in the world do we call everyone foreigners, basically, except the Koreans. Koreans were literally so dominant in Brood War, and it was such a drastically different scene. It was really a very legit sport in Korea that everyone else really were foreigners. It didn't really matter where you came from. Basically, you came from the not Korea section, so you were labeled just generally a foreigner. And that would kind of happen as well in the Korean language, right? With Waeguk, just like someone who outside the foreigner. So that's why we kind of adopted that term. It was so simple. You know, anytime an English commentary or just people posting online would talk about a non-Korean, it really was just easy to say foreigner. And eventually we stopped using that in our cast because it does make some sense not to confuse the general public. But yeah, Koreans were literally so dominant. So I would say up until probably 2016, the use of the word foreigner for all non-Koreans was pretty rampant, and then around that time there was a real drive to try and change that. So I got to mention that first because we are going to talk about the foreigner side of things, the non-Korean side of things, but do be aware that when I say non-Korean, I do not mean that we're going to see nothing but non-Koreans. The truth is that non-Koreans, while they did have certainly more numbers back in the day, when Koreans were allowed to travel to events, which at the beginning was just all they really wanted to do, they won. So we're going to see a lot of Koreans, but still majorly talking about the Western world, no longer in East Asia, but rather talking about a lot of North America and then some Europe. North America actually was, I would say, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but North America really had more of the tournaments initially pop up as far as, you know, knowing about the MLG and NESL and I'm sure a bunch that I don't remember, honestly. I think they were considered kind of the top tier initially, where Europe was, in my mind anyways, a little behind just in terms of like production value, in terms of getting the top players over there. So they were a little more centralized basically than North America, which, you know, Korea would just go to West Coast and East Coast isn't exactly a super short flight, but, you know, nothing's a super short flight from Korea. So anyways, we're going to be in a lot in North America, specifically the United States as well. Canada would be a much bigger force of the StarCraft 2 foreign scene in terms of kind of the smaller tournaments. So like Kings of the North and some WCSs would eventually happen there. But at the beginning, very much North America, United States. So now that I got that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into a video. It took me a little while to find some actual good stuff from the foreign scene back in 2010. 2011, I could find a decent amount once I Googled it correctly. 2010 was a lot more difficult. But I found it, and I found something that this is actually before my time again. So I got into StarCraft 2 basically when it was released, but I didn't get into StarCraft 2 when it was released, if you get, you know what I mean? Like it was not something I was really aware of, this esports thing. So even though I actually live near DC, at least for a couple more days, I did not go to MLG DC, which is what we're going to be looking at. 2010 MLG DC StarCraft 2 finals between IdrA and Select. So I have stories that my friends told me when I eventually started reaching out to be, you know, with all the cool StarCraft 2 kids. And one of the big things I remember being told is that apparently this was one hell of a clown fiesta in terms of tournament production. I guess one of the one of the biggest tournaments of this brand new game outside of Korea. Again, Korea had all this infrastructure and production to look back on because they had this whole Brood War thing. For a lot of the Western world, esports never really reached that type of pinnacle, or not for a while at the very least. So there wasn't a whole lot of people, I guess, super experienced in terms of large scale. There was Halo, there was Counter-Strike, there was Quake, there was, I'm sure, you know, a lot of games that I'm missing out on. And so I think in terms of experience with some of the smaller to medium-sized lands, there was that. But large lands, I mean, StarCraft 2 really did just encourage a lot of people to suddenly get into this whole competitive gaming thing. So the one thing that I do remember from this tournament is that apparently they did not have enough seats. That was basically a meme. I think it was so bad. They didn't have enough seats for anyone. So, and the seats that they had were absolutely terrible. Don't ask me why that's the only thing I remember, but that's the only thing everyone ever told me, to be honest, is that the seating situation was terrible. But besides that, that's the only tidbit I can add here. Apparently, IdrA versus Select are the finals. And this is not super surprising. You might know that, you know, if you watch my previous videos, that IdrA was also playing in GSL around this time. So it does seem like he was just beat-bopping around the world. You can see that he is on Evil Geniuses. That was pretty quickly a pickup, and he was on there and one of the main members of the team, one of the most popular members of the team for years afterwards. But Evil Geniuses, again, for those who aren't really familiar with the StarCraft 2 history, Evil Geniuses was a big freaking deal. Nowadays, I'd say that they still have recognition as an old school team, but honestly, a lot of what I read is kind of making fun of EG. And I guess they were kind of made fun of back in the day because they kind of came at the scene almost like a corporation more than a, you know, band of nerds getting together. And this is just public perception, by the way. I really don't know a whole lot about what happened in there, but that's what happened. I really liked Evil Geniuses. They're probably my favorite team for a very long time because they had a lot of my favorite players, including IdrA was one of my favorite players. But they definitely got some flack for being a little bit I guess, sellouts, which of course is a great thing now that we think about it. But back then, I think that did rub people the wrong way. This whole just picking up whoever's the best with however much money they were able to throw around. So just getting that out of the way, Evil Geniuses was a very big deal and a very big staple in the North American scene. And then eventually they did start to lessen in their importance, probably around the time we get to Pro League with EGTL, but that's for a later video. So IdrA, as you might have heard in the previous videos, was a big deal. He was a Brood War player, one of the best non-Korean Brood War players, which is really saying a lot because Brood War was super, super tiny in the Western world. But he had those mechanics, and he tried to use Zerg to capitalize on that. But we still had a lot of people in Korea, you know, the Koreans who also were playing Brood War that also had very good mechanics. And while I don't know if Select actually was a ex-Brood War pro gamer, it's almost assured that everyone that we witness has played Brood War and was probably somewhat competitive in it. So Select actually had a decent career overall. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, more than decent, I suppose, very, very early on. Eventually, he would stop being more of a pro gamer and would go on more of the communications and organization side. But he was on Team Dignitas, as you can see here. And I would say to me, that was always more European, probably because they are a European company. It's probably what I'm going to be told. But they reached out to a lot of the early StarCraft 2 players as well. All these teams, by the way, no longer in StarCraft 2. So there's the basics. We do have a TVZ to witness, and we do have some of these amazing maps. Also, the casters for this particular best of 5 or 7, whatever it is Day9 and JP McDaniels. Most people know Day9's story. He's never really been shy about talking heavily about his StarCraft experience. It really was a lot of his childhood and teenagehood and going into adulthood, really formed as a person. He's really respectful of that. JP McDaniel, it's not that he's not respectful of his history, it's just that he did move on into being more of a variety streamer. He was more of a host, obviously got into Dungeons and Dragons, so you might know him and still watch his content, but just isn't the same type of, I suppose, isn't this in the same type of area of conversation that Day9 is when we talk about people who really are close to their roots, I suppose. And that's also because I think JP McDaniel didn't have, nearly as much attachment. Like Day9 was a serious gamer of Brood War. He wanted to be a pro gamer, and it was just very difficult for foreigners to be a pro gamer. But that's an aside, just kind of explaining the two directions that they went. Day9, also now a variety streamer, just does talk a lot about improving as a gamer and keeping in a stable mindset, and also, of course, is very interested in all things RTS. So I'm sure their commentary was amazing. I don't remember because I didn't actually watch this one. You can see the little setup, by the way, if you really want to get just a general idea about how much this is probably not really all that official, not all that beautiful in terms of production. Apparently this is not a cardboard box, but a very, very simple setup. I guess these are referees, so there's a little bit of that professional side of things. I don't know if we can get a crowd shot, because there might not be one, because there's no chairs, is what I, again, constantly hear. So it looks like they didn't really have a crowd shot. If we go to the end, spoilers alert, someone won. Oh, there's a good little bit of the crowd. Oh, look at this. Picture perfect framing. My goodness, amazing. This is awesome. So there's a crowd. I mean, it was a convention, but not the same type of crowd we would expect, I suppose. Only a few months after this, to be honest, you know, upwards to a year, there would be more organized competitions with spectators and correct seating and tickets and stuff like that. So we can, I was going to check the map actually. I think they went over the map. Yeah, see, there's a little map intro, which I mentioned in GSL, the GSL video, that they would eventually do map intros.
New in StarCraft 2, high-yield minerals connect the 9 and 12 o'clock position, as well as the 3 and 6. Island expansions can be found in the northwest.
Wait, hold on. I thought this was going to be not so educational, but I'm going to listen to this. Let's hear what this this lady has to say. I'm not sure who it is. Maybe I'll figure it out.
Where we are at. We'll be starting match 1 very soon. The first map is Lost Temple. IdrA did not fare particularly well on this map against Last Shadow, looking a little bit shaky on that map.
Last Shadow, by the way, if you are familiar with League of Legends, it is that's Last Shadow, just to get that clear.
So we are going to go into a map preview video on Lost Temple to see where we are at.
Oh, it was a map preview video.
Welcome back to Lost Temple. If you've ever played a Blizzard RTS, you know what to expect from this map. But it has a few tricks up its sleeve in StarCraft 2. A 4-player map, spawn points are at a cross pattern at the 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock positions. New in StarCraft 2, high-yield minerals connect the 9 and 12 o'clock position, as well as the 3 and 6. Island expansions can be found in...
That was really weird video editing. I'm pretty sure she was talking about the gold high-yield minerals, but they zoomed in on the regular minerals, so that was weird.
In the northwest and the southeast corners. Pay close attention for players harassing the natural expansions outside each base. The cliff area allows for a great place for drops to occur.
Oh my god, look at the amount of cliff space. Oh my god. This was a very famous map, actually. Now all of the original OG maps, I think, are memed upon very, very often. And Xel'Naga is still the most recognized early day map, I would personally say. But this had so many amazing things about it. One thing that would happen in TVZ, which you might witness on this map, I don't know, I'm watching along with you, is that this high ground, this is high ground, guys. There's no ramp going up to this, which is just amazing map making. This high ground would be abused by a Terran, so they would get a tank up there and a missile turret, you know, with a dropship and some SCVs. And they would just harass the Zerg base. And the Zerg, I mean, even if they were savvy enough to play a game where they don't take their natural as their natural, you know, like today, pro blocks happen, right? Where other base would you expect the Zerg to take here? The gold that's blocked? Where the next base is going towards your opponent over here. This is their opponent's natural, potentially. And they can't take a island base. What are they going to do? One base overlord drop? That ain't going to happen. So that was a real sore point for Zergs, and kind of understandable that they, at the time, accepted themselves as underpowered in this matchup. Again, Fruit Dealer really changing the perspective there. But I gotta admit, that is very rude to Zerg players. And I'm just laughing, especially at the whole, like, this, you know, this ledge makes it good for dropships. Or maybe she's talking about this, and it's like, no doy. But then I was looking at this ledge, and I'm just like, oh, Reapers, oh, Blink Stalkers, oh my god. But no one was abusing it as much as they would be, I suppose. I'm sure some people were actually abusing it. But I'm guessing that's all she really had to say. So let's watch some of the production. So apparently we do have the new and improved production, the overlay. We have the timer. and that's about it, actually. Basically, we have the timer. So in the very beginning, they did not have a timer. This is at least far enough into 2010 that they had a timer is all I can gather from that. Oh, and they're using production, and they do have a timer for the production. So that's awesome. We're starting to see experiments with the overlays as well. People would eventually start to use the negative space. Is not exactly the right word, but they'd use the non-UI space. They try and cover. So I mentioned that, for instance, again, moving this, people would, and myself included, put their usually logo or something over this to block replays. This is what the replay timer would always show. You couldn't get rid of it. So then we would have people use these spaces for sponsors. And I guess this one to show the names, and then again using that 1 o'clock versus 7 o'clock position that was so common in Brood War. I guess we'll see throughout this series when the heck they stop doing that, because I don't know. And well, we're not there yet apparently, but they did eventually use these spaces, and then eventually sometime in 2011, I do want to say, we do get a different overlay, but I could be misremembering. Maybe it was as late as 2012. Excited to find out, guys. But yeah, we got a logo, and we got, you know, the player titles, and yeah, we can see who's facing each other. Nice. And then there's a score. That's amazing. Well done. Well thought out. And we're going to see that we do have a typical kind of 2-base setup for the Zerg versus so far a 1-base setup for the Terran. Doesn't look so different from nowadays. This map is decent rush distance, I guess. If you do get the cross spawns, which is what we've gotten here. I don't think they limited the spawn locations, so IdrA got lucky here. Select got a little unlucky. So far, so good. We got the pool into the gas, all going to be different supplies than you guys would know because we had less drones back in the day. And then also the timer is, again, inaccurate to the current time. It's not real time. So 1 base, factory expand. Are we going to get into Hellions? We are going to get into Hellions. Are we, though? I might have lied. That was 2 Hellions, and they're still going. Okay. We're going to have a Thor drop. A Thor push, because apparently this is a thing. Now, I only really picked up on this from the GSL videos. I did not have this in my brain, because again, I wasn't really watching at this time, but apparently building an early Thor was just the cool thing to do. I don't know that logic very well, but I guess because mutas were also the cool thing for the Zerg to do, it made sense. And then I don't know when magic boxing was invented either. That is the idea of microing your mutas so that they fly past the unit you want to attack and then hold positioning so that they're spread out. So they're in a box. They're not clumped up, because Thor's wreck clumped up mutas. Well, we're going to find out. 2-base muta with +1 on the way. Select only just now getting into his natural command center after a full 1-1-1 Hellion drop into Thor drop. StarCraft 2 was amazing. Oh. Well, this does make a lot of sense. If he brought an SCV and built a bunker and missile turrets, that would be even better. You know, clear up the creep spread. Get a stew going. And you can see, okay, so Magic Box does seem to exist almost right off the bat. This does look like one to me, unless it was just accidental. And then we do have the counterattack, and apparently that was the game. Oh my god. Oh lord. That was the game. 2 bases versus just almost 2 bases. Wow. StarCraft 2 in 2010. Beautiful stuff. Oh, imagine building Marauders against someone going to lane Baneling. Select. What is you doing, buddy? Why? Okay then, 3 Marines. Obviously not going to handle this. This is, oh my gosh, guys. IdrA made 8 mutas. Select made 1 Thor and 3 Marines. And believe it or not, the 8 mutas won. Shocking stuff. Desperate attempt to get a missile turret in a bunker, I guess. Gotta give him credit for at least acknowledging he was screwed. It was great. Let's listen to some of the analysis from the amazing commentary team.
GG from Select. IdrA taking the first game 1-0 online.
Oh, look at this old UI. Oh my gosh. I was wondering when I got to talk about this. If you knew this old UI, you would have recognized a lot of what GSL's graphics were trying to copy or emulate was this overlay. So they had the same type of box and whatnot, and that's when they filled in all their information. This was the actual overlay, guys. This is not something that MLG designed. This is them going into the Battlenet client after exiting a game, much like you might see if we're a bit late to transitioning. If you watch some of the production of some of the solo streams. And oh boy, it just brings back memories. The rumor, I don't remember if it was confirmed or not, as to why Battlenet 2.0 was more like Battlenet, what do they make it fun of, like 1.5 or not even? The rumor is that they actually hired people who were more accustomed and leaning more into a potential type of console UI, which doesn't really make any sense because this wasn't going to be on console, at least as far as I know. But I think that's kind of the trend that was going on at this time. So we know that trends can sometimes be really stupid and really unnecessary and also not always gel with a lot of stuff. That's the only explanation I can really give. But I do believe someone actually has a fact-based article out there about why Battlenet 2.0 is, well, frankly, a failure. And you might be saying I'm being a little harsh. It's not that bad of a UI. Calm down. Why is Battlenet 2.0 a failure? Jeez. Well, yeah, okay, the UI might be fine for 2010. You know, that's whatever. It's nostalgia right now, but I guess that was fine at the time. The real problem was the lack of communication, for instance. Initially, you had no way to really communicate. I'm not sure if clans even existed. The fact that you could not join chat channels initially was bizarre as hell. Of course, the infamous "we want LAN." There was no LAN, and you could only access StarCraft 2 if you had that internet, which in 2010 most people did, to be fair, but it obviously stopped some of the crispy, LANs. You'd actually get disconnects because the internet would fail or something. And that would end up happening a decent amount of times throughout StarCraft 2's history. So still a little sore that we didn't get LAN. Yeah, basically. And then there are just other things that just made this not very beautiful, not very much, a downgrade from what I remember, even what we all remember, I would assume, considering most of y'all watching this are probably a little bit older. Warcraft 3. The Warcraft 3 UI and setup with the tournaments, which StarCraft 2 doesn't have at this point. There are no tournaments. There is a leaderboard, I think. You can see who's leading on the ladder, but it was worse than something that they had developed years ago for Warcraft 3. And anyone wants to elaborate on all the reasons it was worse, please feel free to do so in the comments, because I know there was a lot of them. But beautiful overlays in it. Beautiful. Anywho, moving on. We do have some of the commentary. That's what I wanted to listen to.
It is 2 best of 3s that Select must win. IdrA only has to win 1 best of 3. So
wow. Okay. So first of all, the double elimination classic meeting in the finals, which StarCraft 2 abandoned basically and only brings back occasionally, which is actually kind of surprising. I didn't realize that some of the initial tournaments had this system, because it really is a very common system in other esports and other competitive stuff, anything. That if you have a double elimination bracket, whoever comes from the lower bracket then has to beat their opponent twice. So they make up for the drop down to the lower bracket, and then they win the main bracket, if you will. It does make sense. Like, I can't argue with it making sense. Personally, and this is no doubt affected by my start in esports being StarCraft 2, I always have preferred just saying the lower bracket is grueling and terrifying, and you get usually more hours put into the game, so the guy who's in the upper bracket can take a bit more of a chill approach, show less of their strategies. That's punishment enough. So let's just go ahead and get a best of 7 going instead of this weird best of 3 into best of 3. And then I do want to say, having this as a best of 3 into best of 3 is very small in terms of the games played. Again, probably a leftover from Brood War. In StarCraft 2, very quickly into its scene, it was recognized that basically it needed more than a best of 3. It needed more than best of 1s if you were talking about something like the open bracket. So now the standard, and what has been standard for StarCraft 2, I want to say since 2011, is that you have best of 3s for most of the non-premier matches. I don't know how to put that. And then you have best of 5s, maybe starting around the playoff bracket, and then a best of 7 finals. That's kind of how everything goes. In Brood War, even today, they still have best of 1 for, again, those like less important matches, some qualifiers, whatever you want to say. And then some of their big matches can go only up to a best of 5. A lot of their finals, I believe, went to a best of 5. And the reason for that, as far as I understand it, is that basically people agree, or seem to, Brood War has less variance. If you really are better than your opponent, you can prove it in a single game. In StarCraft 2, with mechanics being less demanding and a little more just a lower bar, I suppose, people can rely on their strategies and cheeses to get games, a game. But if you bumped it up to a best of 3, then basically everyone agrees in StarCraft 2, if you win a best of 3, you were the better player that day. So it really is just that different perception as to how much a better player can prove they're a better player in a single game. I think that's the best way to put it. And we know that eventually StarCraft 2 got up to best of 7 finals, and then there was even a time period, Legacy of the Void, that we thought maybe a best of 9 would have to be done. Thankfully, that never happened. That would have been pretty terrible timing-wise. So yeah, to hear the best of 3 and a best of 3, I think is just this being so close to the start of StarCraft 2, and thus so close to the only, predecessor, the only example being Brood War, which would have had plenty of best of 3s in very, very important matches, and best of 5s are the most important. And in this case, it's 2 best of 3s, so it kind of evens out to be like a Brood War best of 5, I guess, something. So yeah, Select has to win 2, IdrA has to win 1. Let's listen to more talk about the actual game. Hopefully, I want to hear their analysis.
IdrA is 1 game away from taking the entire tournament. So this is a lot of pressure on Select. He must choose very wisely.
And we are anxiously, like I said, still waiting for Select. He's going to take some time to think about it. There he goes right now. You can see him thinking there. IdrA has got to be very confident after that win. Lost Temple, not a map that usually favors Zerg, but IdrA saying that it is not anything. And there goes Select choosing Xel'Naga Caverns as the next map.
Okay, also loser picks instead of vetoes preemptively. That's not too surprising to hear.
We are going to be playing, so I'm going to go ahead and set that lobby up.
Now that is a...
Of course, the commentators are also the observers and the admins. That's not surprising at all back in the day. This is the most replayed. I want to see what that's about.
Attacks quite easily. Good luck to the players, and back to you guys at the desk.
We are back here with match point for IdrA. Give a cheer for Select, the red Terran in the bottom left, the Cinderella story.
Oh my god. This is literally match point. No, 2 best of 3s is insane. That's just so great. Okay, wow. Okay, yeah. Select needs to win this game to continue on in the finals. Whoa.
In his 13th best of 3 here at MLG. IdrA, of course, the USA Zerg bad boy in the top right. So it looks...
Huh. This is funny, but I'm not even thinking about that. I'm thinking about the way Day 9 introduced. So I guess the whole building up of the player intro would not happen for a little while when it came to these big lands. That was very much like a very casual online intro that I would do when I'm streaming to, no one live, no one in person. But in person, we do give a little bit more time for the build up, for the observer to do their pan around and their zoom, and for the crowd to start cheering. So that's just a little interesting, because you could hear the crowd wanted to cheer, but then it was like, wait, no, he just continues going. I guess we shouldn't cheer.
Looks like Select making a little joke about the fact that he wishes he had a Zerg practice partner, but I don't think he should sell himself down the river so soon. He had just a few adjustments.
IdrA very famously a bit of a rager, a bit of a whiner, and also very much a belief that the Zerg race is underpowered. And perhaps he had a point in some metas. Whatever you want to say, guys, whatever. He definitely did not have a point overall, and wouldn't surprise me if he continued to talk about Zerg being underpowered even well into Blood Infestor. Would not surprise me.
To make, and he would have been able to perform quite well in that previous game.
Yeah, and one thing, I mean, we talk about how much Select plays the ladder, and he plays a lot on the US
player webcams, A+ production
ladder. Talking to him earlier last week, he was mentioning to me the fact that he doesn't have any good Zerg opponents to play.
So they're just reiterating on what he talked about. I want to hear some meat and potatoes of the strategy. Come on, give me something.
Very fast tech to a starport. We see the tech lab coming out as well.
Who needs a wall versus Zerg, by the way? That's something that hasn't been done. Select's just like, I don't need a wall. It's fine. I'll put my supply depot somewhere else. Okay, whatever you want to do, man.
Well, and here's the double Hellion play. Select is going to try to find some opening to squeeze up there. But we see IdrA doing a very good job of continuing to add larva, positioning those queens, and having enough Zerglings up on the high ground to block.
I don't know if his speed is late, or this is actually how late Zerg's always got their speed. But the fact that he doesn't have any mobile units to protect a very, very wide open natural base does mean that he has to afford some spine crawlers. This would be absolutely terrible if you did it nowadays. This would be just atrocious. Even without speed, honestly, people would defend with queens. But I should note, queens are a little less powerful in this version. They have been changed very, very often. Well, not very often, but they've been changed enough. They've been impactfully changed. It's a better way to put that. That's, yeah, they're not as good. They don't have as much range is actually their main problem right now in this particular patch. They did not get a range increase until the year 2011, I'm pretty sure. And then that would help create the Broodlord Infestor problem. If you want to hear more about that, I have a actual history video about Broodlord Infestor you guys can go check out.
Continuing to spread that creep, which of course gives him sight and allows his Lings without speed, his speed is almost done, to go ahead and try to get us around onto those Hellions. We do have the starport, or no, the factory switching out onto that tech lab. It is going to go ahead and land. Does he have a factory? No, he does not. So we might just be seeing tanks. A medevac is going ahead and being built out of that starport. Some more damage here, I believe. Was that a creep tumor that he just killed from the high ground trying to go down?
It sadly was a cancel, so he is not going to be able to do as much damage as he wished.
He was trying to micro the Hellion on the high ground to kill that creep tumor, which would be absolutely not useful in terms of your APM, right? It's absolutely not. But in this case, because creep tumors really weren't as well microed, then you would have like one creep tumor. So killing a creep tumor, in this case, sacrificing a Hellion and sacrificing all this APM and all this potential other map control might have actually made a lot of sense, but he was denied the opportunity.
And Select doing some very nice little plays there with Hellions. And if we go to the unit counting station, IdrA again getting barely enough Lings to be able to deal with some sort of drop. The layer is still a little, of course, is taking out the Overlords. And there's the big push, the anti-timing by IdrA for unburrowing that spine crawler, but all the speed Zerglings are arriving and surrounding these Hellions. Hellions are so weak against Zerglings if they do get surrounded, but doing a nice little lineup there, trying to retreat back to this medevac, but they're
not really the best micro, but I guess this is such a unideal scenario for Hellions being tucked into corners for those potential surrounds.
Do so much damage with those Lings. Looks like no Lings are coming. Actually, here they come across the map just like last time.
And this is such a smart play by IdrA right when all of a sudden the harass seems about finished by his opponent. Wants to immediately put as much pressure on as he can. In the main of Select, we see absolutely no good anti-air.
The tanks probably don't have siege yet, which is why they're not immediately sieged. Look at the amount of space that Select has to cover to defend Ling run-bys. I mean, you don't defend Ling run-bys, you just don't. They happen or they don't. In this case, the bunker being so far out would be actually vulnerable to Ling surrounds if it was the only thing defending his base. Eventually, I think Terrans would learn, you know, if you're up against Ling Muta, tucking it into the mineral line more so would be a little more effective, but theoretically, this is enough units. It's just that, you know, there's no missile turrets. As the casters are pointing out, that mutas are on the way.
Just Marines without stim at this point in time. IdrA is going to have to retreat, but Select is going to be in a very awkward position trying to be able to...
Oh, no, I got to talk about this. Hold on. Okay, so this is a popular feature, weirdly enough, on early day maps. I don't know why, but they did. So we call this little hallway behind you the Tasteless Secret Hallway because that's what they called it back in the day. It's a bit of a meme. And it is a secret hallway. You get around on the other side and you can, you know, get unscouted. But this was a feature on a lot of maps. In fact, on some other maps, they would have the brush hiding these rocks. So if you didn't have something behind the brush, then you couldn't see the rocks being torn down. And that would be the only access into the natural. So Select is making sure to spot any run-bys that come up from behind. But why this brush in your natural or main covering important features was popular, I really don't know. You know, Metalopolis, gotta do it again. Metalopolis also had one in your base. If you spawned in the 6 o'clock position, for instance, it was in the top left, and people would hide pylons there and warp in fast because they weren't slow pylons. So this is, yeah, the more I think about it, the more I'm wondering why the heck was this such a popular feature on maps? Because they could, I suppose, because they could. I don't think Brood War had any influence on this, but let me know if I'm wrong.
Very awkward position trying to be able to stay alive against Mutalisk in the later stages of the game, and as you've been pointing out every time, very fast +1.
Yeah, that makes such a big
difference. Siege tanks. Siege is on the way. What's up, man? Siege and no stim. Ho ho ho! Gotta prioritize, you know, tanks over stim when you're up against mutas. It doesn't seem like Select is playing particularly well. Let's watch an engagement. Let's see where the micro goes down here.
Already, and this is pretty much what we always see IdrA do. Select is actually moving out with all of those Marines. It's going to be very important that he can get those.
He just missed the army with that scan. And he didn't scan when he went in on creep. Oh my god. What a fool.
Tanks into siege mode, and here we go.
And there's the stim. He needs to back away. There's a lot of Banelings. He needs to run off creep. There's the siege mode. He doesn't really manage to pick off that many, and the Mutalisk just annihilate.
You also notice a complete lack of splitting. Marine King's micro might at this day of age be considered normal. Even gold players could do Marine King split level micro. Well, maybe not that much, but they could split. It just wasn't really a thing. People weren't considering it, and certainly it wasn't something that Brood War players were showcasing when they used Marines against Zerg players in TVZ. They wanted to form a blob. They wanted to form a blob. They probably couldn't even micro like we do in StarCraft 2, even if they really wanted to, just because the AI and the unit boxes and stuff is just so different in Brood War. So, and there's no Banelinks either in Brood War, so there's no reason to have to split. So this is why Select at this point in time does absolutely zero splitting. Give him a year and he'll probably be doing at least a little bit of splitting.
Everything. IdrA is one.
Oh, he focus fired though. Credit. You get 1 point of credit.
Game away from victory. Select trying to micro. Select has just lost all of his tanks. He just did not siege up at the right time. IdrA now just marching forward with all of these Mutalisks. The Roach change didn't matter at all for him. Just Mutas and Banelinks for it.
Is he talking about the Roaches being reduced to, or being increased in supply? I thought that was a beta thing. This could be around the beta. This could be immediately after the beta. I have no idea. But Roaches used to be 1 supply, guys, and they were super overpowered, and then they got changed. So that might be what they're talking about. That is funny. That is interesting. So IdrA wins 2-0, literally a grand finals of a major tournament, kind of. Takes less than 25 minutes. Roughly 3 minutes to 21 minutes. Awesome. And then one of the casters would also be the interviewer, because you had to be every single role possible to actually get hired, and there's just not enough budget or know-how to do anything else. And also they hired the lowest budget camera guys, so the framing is, again, super amazing. Solid stuff. But that is some Foreigner StarCraft 2, although sucked as Korean, that you can see. So again, taking more time than I was necessarily hoping, but so many things to talk about. Some future videos, I will be getting into more of the 2011 era. As you can see, a little stop on Grand Final BlizzCon 2010, talking about Ace versus Moon, all that good stuff. Hope you enjoyed the video once again, guys, and let me know your lovely stories from the days of your back in the good old days of StarCraft. Anything I got wrong, please correct me in the comments as well. So like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time for more StarCraft 2 Weekly. Bye.